Hey there, Damon Owens here. Excited to be with you once again to talk about the 10 biggest issues that every healthy relationship knows how to handle. That's a big, tall order, but we're going to tackle some big, beautiful, hairy things to make your relationships great. And we're speaking primarily about romantic relationships, perhaps leading to marriage or marriage itself. But these things are so human that mastering them will help you to build every type of relationship, friendship, within your family, co-workers, name it, any human relationship, because these are fundamentally human, even when they have very specific applications. So let's dive right in. Number one, intimacy and connection. Every healthy relationship knows how to build intimacy and connection. And there's some things we have to unlearn, right? Intimacy is not primarily sex. If we look at sex through the lens of love, we see that intimacy is the depth of that love, that gift given and received. And being able to connect with what we call rituals of connection allow us as couples to be attentive and to build intimacy, that deep bond of love, even creating passion and romance. And when I speak of rituals of connection, I'm talking about working together, playing together, talking together, and praying together. Those four things, work, talk, play, and pray, these are things that you find in your unique way that build great intimacy in friendships. It's how you enter into communion. It's a form of communication that intimacy and connection deepen in a very particular way. So we'll talk about that one, number one, first, intimacy and connection. Number two, conflict. Every healthy relationship understands how to deal with conflict. First and foremost, conflict is not a failure or even a sign of failure necessarily. Primarily, conflict is an opportunity. This is one of the biggest things that I've had to struggle in 29 years of marriage with Melanie, that I'm a bit conflict avoidant. You have to really press me. We'll get into conflict styles in a moment. But to be in conflict really means to recognize that when we're trying as unique, unrepeatable persons to enter into communion, we're unique and unrepeatable. We got quirks and foibles and memories and triggers and all these things that pile up, and they're front and center because we're trying to protect ourselves. We're trying not to be hurt. Conflict is legitimately where two unique, unrepeatable people come together and are trying to work out how we can enter into more intimacy, more connection, more communion. Conflict is an opportunity. So the first things we need to understand that there are different conflict styles. Some like to fight, some like to freeze, some like to fly. But in wherever your style is, knowing yours and your beloveds in this case is essential in being able to be attentive to them, to do what we call caretaking in conflict. And caretaking in conflict means that even though we disagree on a subject, we don't have to be disagreeable. And the conflict is not person to person. It's on a specific issue that's blocking us from really entering into communion. So conflict in terms of styles, attentiveness to the other, but caretaking. Hey, Mel, look, I know we're fighting right now. Things are really difficult. Can I get you a cup of coffee? My temperature is really high right now. I'm not really in a good conversation mode. Can we just hold off for a minute? I promise we're going to get back. Give me an hour just to clear my head, clear my heart, because something's really triggering me. That's a caretaking in conflict that communicates to each other that it really is not about me rejecting you or accepting. It's about something here is keeping us from entering into deep intimacy. It also is an opportunity for making up, learning how to resolve these conflicts, not so much fully, it's almost a myth, but being able to enter into making up after arguments, forgiveness, a mercy, giving each other mercy one to the other is giving more than what we think the other is actually due. That's a real posture in healthy relationships. So conflict is an opportunity. It's not a sign of failure. Number three, our third issue, big issue, attachment styles. There's a whole world of study, and we'll certainly be getting into more of this as we move through the series later on in more detail because it deserves it. But attachment theory recognizes that there is a secure way that we attach to one another, seeing another as another, not being threatened, not being intimidated, not running away. But there's also other styles, avoidant, where we don't like too much intimacy, and it's a reflex. It's not a decision, and sometimes it gets too much too soon. We just need space to move apart in order to come back together again. That's an avoidant attachment style. And then there's an anxious one. It's almost like the opposite in a certain sense, where we're so concerned about the minutiae and the detail, and we're looking for any sign that somehow the relationship is going to die and going to break off, and we want to make sure we understand everything. Tell me everything that happened. Tell me this. What are you feeling? What are you feeling right now? And there's a little bit of an anxious approach to it. Now, as much as I'm mocking that, they're not good and bad as much as they are just different. And being attentive to our attachment styles is a form of love. It's a language of love that enters into the reality of the other person, even as it reveals our own attachment style. And any one of these can enter into deep intimacy. Even as we're entering into more security, all of these are good, so we should be attentive to that. Number 4, fears and disappointments. This is a real intimate part of understanding what are the things in this limbic part of our brain, our emotional brain, that triggers us. What are we afraid of that sometimes we haven't even articulated? These things are buried in our emotional brain based on past experiences and memory and traumas that we'll talk about in a moment. But fears and disappointments, every good relationship understands how to navigate these as they disclose themselves and come into view because of our relationship. That's again why it's good. It said there's no other way that we could come to a deep knowledge about ourselves or about another person except in this pursuit, this journey of love. So fears and disappointments is a key area that every couple knows how to navigate, every relationship. And of course, there's a big difference between fear and danger. Danger is real. Fear is a false expectation appearing real, right? You can use that one. But it also helps us to grow in trust and confidence in both God and with one another and even within ourselves. Number 5, and the biggest issues, communication differences. Hello, y'all are old enough to know this reality exists with every person that you absolutely meet. We all communicate differently. Some of us are more verbal. Hello. Some are more feeling, affective. Some are more thinkers. Name these particular styles, but we communicate ourselves differently. Some are very attentive to sort of the nonverbals in a room. Some are absolutely clueless. But the reality is that because we have different communication styles, it's an act of love, not only to learn our beloved style and speak it, but also to come to learn our own. How do we communicate? Can we communicate even differently? Almost like you learn another language. You want to speak Spanish or Polish or German. That's an act of love to be able to communicate with a whole millions of other people that speak that language. So knowing there's differences, we can see some people care more about facts. And people say facts don't care about feelings. How many times have you heard that? Well, that's true. Sort of, but it's also true that feelings don't care about facts, that the emotional connection in this communication is just as, if not even more important as these deep, intimate relationships grow. And it really is about communion, entering into communion with one another. So learn the different communication styles as an act of love. Every good relationship does that. Number 6, your past. Ooh, sticky, difficult, especially when we have a lot of years behind us. We all have a past. It begins literally in our family of origin and all the relationships, our mother, father, sisters, brothers, good, bad, and ugly. It doesn't necessarily mean just traumas. These memories are including our expectations about marriage and love and friendship. Things that were formed, things that were hurts, sure, disappointments, but also delights. And sort of the imagination when we're younger, growing through all these relationships. So there's a whole reality of family of origin that every healthy relationship understands, because that's what's giving explanation for the way that we react and act to one another. Past friends, past romantic relationships. All of these things play into the person that we are now. And it's an act of love, if not an adventure, to enter in when it's time. Like with intimacy, it takes time and it has its own pace. That unveiling is an act of, I want to know you. I want to see you. And we need to be safe. We need to feel safe that we can communicate ourselves one to the other. But don't make no mistake. There is no Xing out of the past and moving forward. There's a constant unveiling that will help us in this moment to see, know, and love each other more. Number 7, woundedness, brokenness, weakness, sin, imperfection. In other words, humanity. Everyone does not expect in any healthy relationship that themselves or their partner is healthy. There's a woundedness, a brokenness from all our years of life because of sin, also because of virtues we need to work on or vices that we've accepted, even all to the point of an addiction. But you recognize that this person is a gift and you can be loved and should be loved as you are. Even as I love you so much, I can't help you stay where you are. I help you become what you're called to be. That's a both and. I love you as you are, but too much to let you stay there. And that should be sort of the driving heart of it, accepting another as another in all of their imperfection, all of their weakness, not expecting and demanding perfection, but allowing our relationship to perfect us. See, that's the work of love. And not say, I'm perfect, and nobody would ever say that, but expecting sort of a perfect, healthy response in people, and very few of us are actually perfect and healthy. Very few. So that perfection is actually the fruit of our relationship. And having that right order is a beautiful part of every healthy relationship. Number 8, boundaries and space. Right? Every relationship requires boundaries and space. Even God, within the Godhead himself, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, there's a word that speaks about the quote-unquote space that allows their perfect communion. And we being made in the image and likeness of God means that we also have boundaries and we also have space that's necessary. And this changes over time. It grows closer. Sometimes there's spacing out. There's a breathing to it. But the boundaries and reality of that are essential for our relationship. Every healthy relationship has it. I mean, the difference between a river with boundaries and a river without boundaries is the difference between a river and a swamp, right? So there's a reality, as I said, the boundaries don't just keep you from, it allows you to become what you are, to be authentically you. And a river must have boundaries, and our hearts must have boundaries. That doesn't mean they're never to be crossed. It means that they're always to be reverenced. And as they grow because of the relationship, we can see, I'm thinking like my engineering days of the fluid flow, that the tighter the boundaries, actually the faster the current of the water. So there's an intensity and a passion that actually is enkindled when we respect these boundaries. But then as we grow in terms of our love, we enter and welcome others into. But make no mistake, in every situation, every healthy relationship, we need boundaries and we need space. Learn yours, learn your beloved's, and respect it. Number 9, time. Or I should say the lack of time. Every relationship knows that we don't have much time. And in all this world, we've got this tyranny of the immediate. That's what I call it. I got it from somewhere. A tyranny of the immediate. We got to get all these things done, and the pressing things of the devices and our phones and our texts and work, and all these things are aspiring to who we're going to be. There's this constant, especially in our culture now, doing. And that limited time always makes us face, inevitably, how little time we actually have to do much of anything. So this is an issue, again, of prioritizing, of putting first God, each other, family, and ourselves. And that priority concept needs tending and tilling. And that tending and tilling of that priority is not a failure of imbalance as much as it is the reality of balance. There's no such thing as balance in life as much as there is knowing when you're out of balance and doing what you do need to do to get back in it. And being attentive to that means that we know that we have limited time. We have the priority that if we love, we place the first things first. And every healthy relationship finds that right balance of that priority. And I would say number 10 of the biggest issues of healthy relationships is this trauma, trigger, wounds, and respecting their existence and looking them as opportunities to heal. We're giving each other therapy. We're not doing open heart surgery on ourselves at all times. This kind of healing is so attentive, it's so tender, that it requires a whole slew of accompaniment, whether it's you as the beloved, whether it's a friend, whether it's a book, sometimes a coach, a spiritual director, a conference. Sometimes it could be professional therapy. All these things are at our disposal, praise be to God, now. But the goal of all of them at each of those levels is a healing and a wholeness, and ultimately a holiness. But to not acknowledge sort of that those things that keep us from receiving and giving ourselves in love, these are essential. These are essential for any healthy relationship with friends, with family members, with coworkers. So most importantly, in these deep romantic relationships as well. You ever have those triggers and traumas where the triggers from traumas where you react in a way, good, bad, or ugly. You don't even know why you did it. It just happens. Those things, you be curious about those. Be curious about the things when you see them in yourself and with people that you care about. And not necessarily, again, going in and being the open heart surgeon, but being attentive, being curious, being reverent. That's something that can help in growing our intimacy and in our communion. And they exist in all of us in some level, degree, or not. But again, we don't want to make this overly therapeutic. We want to prioritize those things that keep us from really, really entering into one another in a communion. And expect it, even though I said before we don't have much time, put this out onto the timeline. Because what happens during these processes of healing is that we start to gain trust with one another. So a healthy relationship says, I can trust you with some of these deep, tender parts and areas of my heart. And we do this for ourselves, for each other. We prayer in the sacraments, again, with reading, with courses and videos and other people in relationship, mentors, people that really want to walk with you. These all things are available to us as we do this, but we do this with a reverence and this call to communion. But just keep in mind, when we say healthy relationships, we're not talking about perfect ones. We're talking about relationships that perfect us. This is what love does. Love is a power that authentically can perfect us to become more human, more of the ability to receive and to give each other in love. But these are my 10. my top 10. So I hope that helps. Look forward to seeing you again. As always, take a look at us on Instagram at CatholicMatch or the YouTube channel, youtube.com/CatholicMatch. And send us a note. What would you like to talk about? What would you like to cover? Happy to do that and look forward to hearing from you. We'll talk soon.